If you want to take your shot from looking something like this to a shot like this, it might be simpler than you think. This is filmed on a $5,000 camera and lens setup. It looks terrible. This is the same camera and lens setup. The only difference is we've applied the techniques that I'm going to share with you in this video to create something that looks significantly better. It's about how you use the gear, not the gear that you might have. I just got back to Bali and I'm in this villa, and well, I don't have a filming space here. So I'm going to show you the 5 steps I take when setting up any filming space to make it look super nice and professional. The first thing I'm going to do is pick my scene, and there's going to be 2 main things that I'm looking out for. The first is that there's some interesting elements in the background, and the second is that there's a natural light source working in my favor. My natural light source is coming from outside here, shining in this way. The second thing that I was looking out for is any interesting elements. So I brought in this palm tree. I just put a desk over there that's kind of pointing into the corner. I hung this little green thing. I put a surfboard and I got some lights, which we're going to talk about a little bit more later on. Here's the actual shot, and I think it looks pretty cool. There's a couple of things that I was going to look out for when I decided how I wanted to frame this. Because you can shoot flat against a wall with your background being somewhat symmetrical and squared off, but something I really like to do is actually shoot into a corner. This does a few different things. The first thing is, if you are in a confined space or a very small space like a bedroom, by shooting into the corner, it's going to create a lot more depth because it's going to be pushing that corner away from you. And the other thing I really like about this is it naturally creates leading lines, framing yourself up nicely because everything is kind of going away behind you into the background. Next is framing and composition. And the main thing I'm going to focus on here is creating depth with 3 different methods. The first is simple. One of the biggest mistakes I see people doing is sitting right up against their background. And this makes the image so much more flat than you could have it if you just pulled yourself as far away from your background as possible. So if I'm shooting into the corner, I'm going to put my camera right up in the corner of the opposite side of the room and come as far away from the background as I can. The further away from the background you are, the more depth you're creating in your shot. The next thing is by creating a shallow depth of field, or that beautiful blurry background. And the way that you're going to do this is shooting at your lowest aperture or f-stop. Mine's at an f2.8 right now, and it creates a nice blurry background. It's not too blown out that you have no idea what's going on here, but it is enough just to create some separation on me and separate me from that background. And the third is by using practical lights or having multiple pockets of lights within your scene, which is exactly what I've done with this one shining onto the palm tree and the one over here shining onto that lens and just some things on the table there. This creates me being lit up and then kind of the shadows in the background, but there's these other 2 lights as well that just further enhances that feeling of depth. I generally just stick to the rule of thirds for a setup like this, where I have my eyes on that top line of the thirds and I'm kind of within the 2 sidelines of the thirds. This also means if I want to cut any short form content from this, I'm generally going to have enough space to do that. And it's also going to avoid uncomfortable, weird feeling shots where I have like way too much headroom or not enough headroom, or if I'm just way too far away here in the frame, taking up too little of it, or even worse, right up here in the front of the frame, making it kind of awkward and uncomfortable. So being right here, I feel, is the perfect position. Generally, it's going to cut me off slightly under the elbows, and my eyes are going to be on that rule of thirds, having a little bit of headroom right here. Just a quick one. If you are interested in learning everything I know about becoming a successful YouTuber, I'm putting together a program that covers everything from filming, editing, thumbnail and title techniques, growth strategies, talking to camera, and so much more. It is the hugest program of its kind and the biggest project I have worked on in my life. Right now, there is a wait list that you can join to apply to get early access and either join the small limited group of people that are going to be getting it for free that we can prove the concept on, or you'll get notified for early access and a massive discount before it properly launches. So the waitlist is going to be down below. Go click on that link if growing as a YouTuber is something you are interested in. If you don't have money to invest in expensive light gear, I totally get that. And you have two options. The first is going to be either standing in front of a natural light source like a window when there's nice, soft, diffused light coming in and lighting you up. Standing in front of a window that has a nice, soft, diffused light making my face look still quite nice will definitely work. And you can see this shot still looks pretty good. And the second is to use normal household lights or a cheap light from a hardware store and shine it into something, bouncing off onto yourself. This could even be something like a bed sheet that you hang up and shine that light right into it. Or if you're on the opposite side of your room, being far away from your background, which you should be, you can shine that bright light straight into a white wall and it's going to bounce the light back onto you. If you want to invest a little bit more, you can get something like a reflector. Even a 5-in-1 reflector is relatively cheap, and you can either shine it through the white or you can bounce it off that white, and it's really going to make a nice difference. If you can get an actual light setup, that is of course going to be the most ideal. You can control so many aspects about it, like the temperature, the brightness, and also just have a really nice softbox that is going to make it look extremely professional in the easiest and least amount of effort possible. Right now, the light that I'm using is the newer MS150C. It's an amazing light. I can control everything I need to do with it, and it has this really nice softbox on top of it. It is a relatively more professional light, which is going to help me get this beautiful look that I'm getting right now. If I'm using an actual light, the first thing I'm going to do is take note of where my natural light is coming from. I'm going to place my light in the same area as that to further motivate it. 45 degrees up and 45 degrees to the side, shining on my face, keeping it the same side as where my natural light is coming from. Lighting is obviously going to make a huge difference. Where you place your lights in relation to your camera angle is going to be the difference between a pro and amateur looking shot. This looks terrible, my light's right behind me. But if I was to simply just swing around and have that light lighting me up with some nice context in the background, it infinitely looks way better. One of the most key things you can look out for when you are actually lighting your scene is to notice the shadows and the shapes of the absence of light instead of the areas that you're lighting up. So if you look at me right now, I have this nice light coming in from the side, but this side of my face is relatively shadowed. Of course, it's lit up a bit. I don't want a too dramatic look, but noticing the shadowed side and how you're sculpting that light is going to be very beneficial. The closer you can get your light source to your subject, the softer your light is going to be, because it is relatively going to be bigger. So the further away, it's not going to look as soft, and we want soft light. The other control we will have with this is that if we want our background to be darker, we can make our key light brighter, meaning our camera will expose for us and that background is going to fall away a bit darker. If we want a generally bright scene like I have right now, my light is set quite low and the exposure is set for the subject again, but that background ends up being quite light, and I've got those lights in there and a lot of natural light coming into the room. But you do have the control to make your background lighter or darker by either making this light brighter or darker. The next aspect of lighting is using practical lights, and that's what we mentioned when we were talking about creating depth. I have this practical light in the background shining into this palm tree, creating some extra depth just by lighting it up and creating that extra light pocket. The other one I have is this one, just shining onto that lens or any other gear I might want to put there. You don't have to have extra lights to do this. You could simply put a bedside light or some sort of light that you would have in your living room, and you can throw it behind you, and it's a really nice way of just creating some extra interest in the background. These ones are also gonna give me somewhat of a hair light, which isn't vital for me, but it does help a little bit. Has my collar been like this the whole time? Next up is going to be audio. The most important thing when it comes to audio is getting your mic as close to the audio source as possible. If you happen to be using the in-camera built-in microphone, it often means that the camera is going to be too far away, more than an arm's length, and ideally you want your microphone to be right up within that first foot of your audio source, being your voice. So we pretty much have two options if you don't have a nice microphone. The first is going to be to either use your phone as an audio recorder and either have it just out of frame as close to your mouth as possible, or just fully embrace it and go ahead and talk to it just how I'm doing with this microphone. I personally really don't mind that look. I think it looks quite cool. I could clip this microphone onto my shirt or something, but I choose to hold it. It just kind of normalizes it, and I don't know, I kind of like the vibe. But you can do the exact same thing with your phone and then sync that audio with your camera video footage when you're editing. The iPhone actually sounds surprisingly good. And if I was to talk straight into my iPhone with no other external microphone setting, this is how it would sound. It's pretty good, especially because you already own this phone. The next option is to get a very inexpensive wired lav mic that you can plug straight into your camera, run under the table or something, and put it right here. You can pick some of these up for like 15 bucks. The only downside is that you are tethered to your camera, so if the nature of your videos is you moving around or doing something, it's not really going to work. But if you're just filming a scene like this, having a wire running from there to me right here wouldn't be an issue at all. If it is a massive issue, one other option you might have is to get a lav mic for a phone. You can plug it right in here, put your phone down, and have that mic recording into your phone. It just means you'll have to sync it up again in post, not so much of a big deal. And with Premiere, you can just do auto sync and it actually does all that work for you. Another option, and the option I will preference, is using an actual microphone setup, either like this wireless microphone or one of these little shotgun microphones with an extended cable so you can get it close to your source. Now, these do become slightly expensive, but audio is something worth investing in. So if you have the money, I would highly suggest getting a more professional setup like one of these two options. The one I'm using is the Rode Wireless Go 2, and this is the Rode Video Mic Pro. They both sound amazing. This one I really enjoy using because it cuts a lot out of the background noise, and I can get it so close to my mouth source that I can ensure my audio is going to sound really nice and full for the majority of the time. Here's a little side note. I will normally have my laptop just off screen right here with my notes on it so that I can talk to the lens and then refer back to my laptop for any of my bullet point notes. If you want to know how to script videos and how I work out my bullet points and scripts, I have a whole video on that and it will be linked above. If you want a video that goes full in depth into how you can speak to camera and present yourself in a better way to make yourself appear more confident, even if you aren't, I have an in-depth video about that as well, which you can check out up here. Remember to sign up for the waitlist if you're interested in maximizing your potential as a YouTuber. Other than that, have fun. Bye.